study,
and play come together on a Windows 11 PC.
And for a limited time, college students get
The best of both worlds.
Get the Unreal College Deal. Everything you need to study and play with select Windows 11 PCs. Eligible students get a year of Microsoft 365 Premium and a year of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with a custom color Xbox wireless controller. Learn more at windows.com/student offer. While supplies last. Ends June 30th. Terms at aka.ms/collegepc.
When you need to build up your team to handle the growing chaos at work, use Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It gives your job post the boost it needs to be seen and helps reach people with the right skills, certifications, and more. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need a hiring hero? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs.
I always like to pay tribute to science and even to mainstream archaeology because there's no doubt that a vast amount of wonderful groundwork has been done. And I couldn't do my work. I don't think anybody working in the alternative field could do their work if it wasn't for that big basis of knowledge that has been set up by mainstream scientists. So it's not that they're necessarily all bad or wicked people. The fact is that particularly in archaeological science, you're looking at people who are so convinced that they are right that they just cannot imagine anything else being the case. I think an enormous number. I mean, I've had the privilege, for example, to handle a little piece of iron, a few inches square, that is the remains of an iron plate that once blocked the northern shaft of the king's chamber in the Great Pyramid. The southern shaft of the king's chamber in the Great Pyramid. And this iron sheet, which was removed during excavations in the 19th century, since that time had been sitting in a drawer in the British Museum in London. I and my colleague Robert Boval had to go to the British Museum and exert quite a lot of force and energy and pull many strings in order to actually get that amazing piece of iron relocated in the British Museum's archives. And it was eventually found sitting in a drawer where it seemed not to have been moved for more than 100 years. And what's bizarre about this iron piece is that it doesn't fit at all with the Iron Age, with what we think of as the time of the invention of iron. It's a huge discovery, and yet it's completely ignored. I think Giza is a very complicated site, and if nothing else, the debate over Giza in the last 10 years has helped to make that clear to everybody, that we're dealing with a very complex phenomenon in the case of the three Great Pyramids and the Great Sphinx. Well, here's the weird thing. If the official chronology is accepted, the chronology that's published in all the archaeology and history books, then the Great Pyramid was preceded only by three other pyramids, really. And we're supposed to believe that in a period of 150 years on the construction of three pyramids, the ancient Egyptians acquired all the necessary skills to build something so extraordinary and remarkable as the Great Pyramid of Egypt. And then it stops and goes into reverse. So we have this one isolated period, supposedly around 2500 BC, when the most amazing structures that mankind has ever created are being raised up on the deserts of Egypt. And then both before it and after it, we have the very inferior pyramids being built, which seem to belong to a different, almost to a different culture. But yes, it is the official chronology, but there's something about it that just doesn't make, not what we'd expect to see. It's these missing chunks from the archaeological record, just huge areas of human history that are not represented, and that we're behaving in an incredibly indecent manner towards fellow human beings, and that the world is seething with hatred and stupidity, frankly, and yet every individual feels powerless to do anything about it. We all know as individuals it's wrong, it shouldn't be happening, there must be a better way to organize our lives, and yet when it comes down to what can we do, it seems very little can be done, and this creates a terrible sense of powerlessness and a feeling that we're being led. Is that you have it's ironic, that we have a large educated public that is simply not asking questions. As though the job of asking questions has been handed over to a small group of specialists and politicians, and everybody else just sits back quietly and takes it. and takes the most awful things happening in our world. This is all we've got. This is our life. Before I became an author working on the notion of a lost civilization and ancient mysteries, I was a journalist, and my last job was as East Africa correspondent for The Economist. I was involved in quite a lot of political and investigative journalism. And one of the things that I always liked about America, going back 20 years or so, was the relative freedom of information in America. Maybe the most precious gift that America had to give to the world was this notion that we can say what we want, that information is free, that inquiry is open to everybody. And it contrasted so strongly with the old school Kai British attitude of secrecy and, official secret acts and things being... In Britain, you expect things to be kept from the public. But in America, unfortunately, it's now happening insidiously, that the public are simply being deprived of knowledge in every important area. This is the road to ruin. Sign of a great civilization going rapidly downhill. Which in a way is what we're talking about. And in a way that is what we're talking about. That the whole story of the human race, if we have the wisdom to hear it, seems to be of a gradual climbing up, of a rising towards perfection, and then of humanity overstepping itself in some terrible way, becoming brutal, becoming violent and cruel, and attracting, as the ancient myths say, attracting the retribution of the gods. Well, you see, it's a problem. Machu Picchu is a site I've been to many times. It's a remarkable place. And I think that the key to the mystery of Machu Picchu is, like many ancient sites, Giza included, is that it was built on in two quite different periods. That there was a very early period of occupation of the site, which we see characterized by megalithic architecture with gigantic blocks of stone, and particularly with rock-hewn architecture, where structures are actually carved out of solid rock. And then we have a later period of occupation, which is within the time frame of normal history, by the Inca culture, somewhat before and during the conquest of Peru by the Spaniards from 1530 onwards. We have a later period of occupation of the same site. And I think that what happened is that archaeology has focused on the later period of occupation and has not recognized the possibility of an earlier period of occupation there. So it's possible that the site could actually date from two periods, one of them very old and one of them more recent. And I think it's the same story at Giza. I think that's why there's so much confusion. Yeah, but the site was originally occupied by a culture that made gigantic stone monuments, rock-hewn monuments, and that the site was completed at a later date by another culture, which perhaps was closely related to the first culture, descended from the first culture, but nevertheless different and in a later period of time. So we have a lot of evidence from 2500 BC around the Giza site, but that does not mean that the whole of Giza was constructed in 2500 BC, because there is other evidence, the well-known evidence of the Sphinx and of the alignment of the churches, which suggests a much earlier date. And I think it's the same at Machu Picchu. In fact, in many ways, in the highlands of South America, in the Altiplano around the Andes, with cities like Tiwanaku and of course Cusco in Peru, that this is the picture of an earlier titanic epoch of construction by a forgotten civilization, which is memorialized in the myths and traditions of the region.
Your call has been forwarded to voicemail.
Hi, this is Zoe Deutsch.
And Nick Robinson. Our brand new movie, Voicemails for Isabel, is all about those little moments that feel like the universe is looking out.
Feeling homesick, then your sister calls.
Hearing that perfect song exactly when you need it. Sometimes life rigs things in our favor, like learning about your new favorite rom-com, Voicemails for Isabel. Now playing only on Netflix.